Well, this is what you call being on a roll, okay? So welcome to my third video of the day. On this video, we're going numbers 200 down to 191. So, fighter 200 in my top 1,000, okay, is former light heavyweight champion Jack Delaney, okay? Jack Delaney beat 6 world champions. He fought 98 rounds against champions. And he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 89 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Of course, Delaney, one of Canada's great fighters. Now, Jack Delaney had 26 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 43 knockouts, 23 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Delaney was top 10 rated for a total of 5 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run of 14 fights. Now, Jack Delaney was pound for pound rated for 2 years, and he had 11 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 7 wins. He scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jack Delaney's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Delaney had 15 fights against champions, including 10 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, with 7 KOs. Jack Delaney had 12 fights against Hall of Famers, including 7 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, with 4 KOs. And Delaney had 3 world title fights, including 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, and 1 title defence. I know it's very confusing at each time he fought. There's Jack Delaney, Jimmy Delaney, etc., etc. But yeah, there's Jack Delaney in 200. So now officially into the top 200 proper at 199. It's the powerful Frank Claus, okay, who was very strong, bull-like strong, very strong body puncher. Very good stamina. Frank Claus, great middleweight fighter. He beat 5 world champions. He fought 115 rounds against champions. And Frank Claus beat 6 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 128 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Claus was a pre-rating era fighter, so he has 0 fights against rated fighters. He scored 21 knockouts, 16 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 knockouts in the first round. Sudden urge to cough there for some bizarre reason. I'm a little wet. Now, Frank Claus was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 23 fights. Now, Frank Claus was pound for pound rated for 3 years, and he had a total of 23 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 13 wins. He scored 7 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Frank Claus's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Claus had 12 fights against champions, including 7 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, with 1 knockout. He had 13 fights against Hall of Famers, with a very severe winning record from those 13 fights, with 9 wins and only 2 defeats, 2 draws, with 0 knockouts. And Frank Claus had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, with 0 title defences. So outstanding middleweight fighter Frank Claus. When we go on, okay, to fighter 198, okay, he's a fighter who has a claim of being one of the greatest light welterweight fighters of all time, Antonio Cervantes. Now, Antonio Cervantes beat 5 world champions. He fought 101 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 43 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. Now, Cervantes had 22 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 45 knockouts, okay, 19 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 6 knockouts in the first round. Now, Cervantes was top 10 rated for a total of 8 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 20 fights. Now, Cervantes was pound for pound rated for 3 years. He had 7 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Cervantes' opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Cervantes had 10 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 4 losses, no draws, and 4 knockouts. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 3 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And Cervantes had a massive title fight record, encompassing 21 world title fights. He scored 18 wins with 3 losses, no draws, and Cervantes made 16 title defences. That's a hell of a debate there. Who's the greater light welterweight, Antonio Cervantes or multiweight champion Julio Cesar Chavez, of course, who had that long run at light welterweight, many light welterweight title fights, Chavez. So there's Cervantes in 198. When we go to fight at 197, it is a fighter that at one point Nat Fleischer called one of the best natural talents America produced in his era. It is former welterweight champion Jackie Fields. Now, Jackie Fields defeated 8 world champions. He fought 165 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 74 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Jackie Fields had 34 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 31 knockouts, 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 knockouts in the first round. Now, Jackie Fields was top 10 rated for a total of 6 years. He had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 25 fights, and Jackie Fields was pound for pound rated for 4 years in my all-time rankings. Now, Jackie Fields had 16 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 11 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jackie Fields' opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Jackie Fields had 18 fights against champions, including 12 wins, with 6 losses, no draws, and 1 knockout. Fields had 8 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 5 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. And Jackie Fields had 5 world title fights, winning 3 of them, losing 2, making 1 title defence. So from Jackie Fields in 197, we go to 196. To one of the great bantamweight fighters, and a fighter I've always said should be inducted into Hall of Fame immediately. I don't understand why he's not in there, but hey, it's down to people who vote, but I think it's about high time that some of them actually look at the records of the fighters rather than going on popularity or how badly they get beat up in 2 rounds like Luis Firpo. So number 196, the fact that Luis Firpo's in and someone like Lou Salica isn't is almost an insult to boxing. So Lou Salica, beat 6 world champions. He fought 217 rounds against champions, and Salica beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 104 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Lou Salica in fights against rated opponents comes in with a near half-century total of 47. He scored 13 knockouts, 3 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. Salica was top 10 rated for a total of 10 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run of 17 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings, came close a few times. He had 8 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 3 wins, scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Salica had 20 fights against champions, including 7 wins, 8 losses, 5 draws with 1 knockout. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 5 loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. And Salica had 11 world title fights, including 6 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, and 3 title defences. When you look though, aside from the Hall of Famers and champions, he fought so many of the top contenders of his time. He really has a very, very tough career. So from Salica in 196, we go to 195, to a fighter who goes a bit underrated. Very, very good fighter was Willie Pastrana. Now, Willie Pastrana beat 3 world champions. He fought 55 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 44 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Pastrana had a total of 33 fights against rated fighters. He scored 14 knockouts, 7 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 knockout in the first round. Now, Pastrana was top 10 rated for a total of 10 years. He had the longest unbeaten run of 22 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years. Now, Pastrana had 5 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 3 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Pastrana's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So he had 5 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw with 1 knockout. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. And he had 4 world title fights, including 3 wins, 1 loss, no draw. And Pastrana made 2 title defences. So there's 6 down. On to our next fighter, fighter number 194. It is the French puncher and war hero Georges Carpentier. Now, Georges Carpentier, who travelled all the way up the weight divisions right to heavyweight, where he, of course, pictured he would challenge the Manasseh Mauler Jack Dempsey for the heavyweight title. But what a lot of people don't know is that Georges Carpentier pretty much travelled all the way from flyweight to heavyweight in his career. Now, going from, flyweight like Pacquiao did to light middleweight is an incredible accomplishment. But how would it look if Pacquiao went all that way and then won a world light heavyweight undisputed title, and then even went on to challenge the dominant set heavyweight champion? That is a different kind of thing. Now, it can be argued, that Pacquiao fought tougher opposition in his overall journey to light middleweight than Carpentier did on his journey to what would have then been middleweight, but still Carpentier accomplished an incredible feat, coming from pretty much flyweight and capturing the world light heavyweight title. So Carpentier beat 3, he also, interestingly, took his power with him. He could knock out light heavyweights and heavyweights, so his power didn't fizzle out at welterweight and light middleweight, where suddenly the knockouts were not coming as often. Carpentier could still knock out big fighters with single shots, so he carried his power up just like Tommy Hearns did. So Carpentier beat 3 world champions. He fought 117 rounds against champions, and Carpentier beat 5 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 156 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, he had 6 fights against rated fighters, which is a very limited number due to him being pre-rating era, and Carpentier scored 59 knockouts, 26 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 7 in the first round. Now, Carpentier was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to a total of 21 fights. Now, Carpentier was pound for pound rated for 2 years. He had 13 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 5 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Georges Carpentier's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Carpentier had 11 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 8 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts. He had 13 fights against Hall of Famers, including 5 wins, 8 losses, no draws, with 2 knockouts, and he had 4 world title fights, splitting those 4 title fights into 2 wins, 2 losses, Carpentier also making 1 title defence. So there's 7 of the 10 down. The 8th fighter of this video, and fighter number 193, is the great African-French middleweight Marcel Cerdan. Now, I've always found Cerdan's resume to be wanting compared to the other great middleweights, even though, when you watch him, he was like a super-duper version of a David Lemieux, a powerful puncher, a hooker, very, very strong. When you watch him, he's a bull. He just keeps coming, bludgeoning you with those big shots. Cerdan was a very, very dangerous fighter. Now, he beat 2 world champions individually. Cerdan also fought 30 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 30 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Marcel Cerdan had 16 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 65 knockouts, 35 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 13 knockouts in the first round. Cerdan was top 10 rated as a fighter for 5 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 44 fights. There he is pictured slamming Tony Zale with the right hand. Very powerful, strong hooker, Marcel Cerdan. So Cerdan was pound for pound rated for 1 year. He had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Marcel Cerdan's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So Cerdan had 3 fights against champions, including 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. He had 3 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout, and Cerdan had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, no draw, and 0 title defences. So Marcel Cerdan fits in 193 when we go to fight at 192. Sometimes I still can't believe we're on the 1s, starting with 1, considering I started on a 1 but with 3 noughts behind it, and then went from the 9s to the 8s to the 7s. So it kind of shows me the finish line is almost there. So next up is another well-travelled contender, Charlie Belanger. Now Charlie Belanger beat 3 world champions. I believe he's a new entry this year as well, if I'm not mistaken. He fought 113 rounds against champions, and Belanger beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 43 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Charlie Belanger had a massive total of 67 fights against rated fighters. He scored 37 knockouts, 16 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Now Belanger, due to the era he fought in, he was top 10 rated for 1 year, and he had the longest unbeaten run of 14 fights. Now Belanger was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings. He did have 21 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 7 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Charlie Belanger's opposition fought rate comes in at 9 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So Belanger had 13 fights against champions. That includes 3 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. He had 6 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 4 loss, no draw with 0 knockouts. And Charlie Belanger had 0 world title fights, but an incredibly tough career he did have, and scored many good wins. So from Belanger in 192 we go to the final fighter of this video, and that fighter is the dangerous Fred Apostoli. Now Fred Apostoli, beat 8 world champions. He fought 178 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 112 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Apostoli had 34 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 31 knockouts, 13 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Apostoli was top 10 rated for a total of 5 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 14 fights. Now Apostoli was pound for pound rated for 3 years in my all-time rankings, and Apostoli had 16 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 8 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Apostoli's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Apostoli had 18 fights against champions. That included 9 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw with 5 knockouts. He had 11 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw with 3 knockouts. And Fred Apostoli had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, no draws, and 0 title defences. So there's my latest video. Pretty much through virtually all my top thousands, the top 3 have been, the same 3 fighters. I won't name them because I'm doing a countdown for anyone who catches it who doesn't know. But it's pretty much been the same 3 fighters. I mean, new ratings have changed that. Yes, there are changes in the top 3. For the first time since I first did one of these countdowns, I think 2020 was it? I've done 4 or 5 of these, and for the first time in that time, the new rating system, there are changes in the top 3. But of course I can't unveil that. I have to Scott Rest as are the big names in there. I'm down in middleweight now. I've done heavyweight, cruiserweight, light heavyweight, super middleweight. I'm now working through middleweights. There's still many great welterweights and many great lightweights and featherweights. So it's going to be interesting how it all plays out. But yeah, changes already. But in many ways the ratings are looking, I don't know, I like the look of them for some reason. But again, I need to see them when they're fully done so I can look at the list. But yeah, for now, we have got 190 fighters to go. I'm cooking now for sure. Sped up over last week, and now those videos are finished, typed up. It's just a case of pedal to metal. So there'll be another video coming later on today. So yeah, I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.